Okay, Dr. Sridhar, welcome to our podcast. We are from Unotag and our podcast is called Growth,
Hi.
Master of Growth, right? So, hello, welcome and welcome all whoever are listening to this podcast. We have Dr. Sridhar with us, Sridhar Bodapati, and he's co-founder and CEO of a company called EdQueries. So today we'll be discussing about his startup. How did he scale growth? What are the things that he's implying? Right. So we'll start with Dr. Sridhar. So Dr. Sridhar, introduce to all the listeners who are listening to this across the world.
Hi.
Tell them
Yep.
what is your company doing and what are the problems that you're solving.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Dr. Sridhar Bodapati. So my company is EdQueries. So it's a company which is focused on education, but from a perspective of inclusion. So we ensure that all children are part of the journey of education. So when we say inclusion, it means that children primarily with the intellectual disabilities, children who have ADHD, have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, or any intellectual disability, dyslexia, learning disabilities, those children. And also those who are in general finding learning difficult or boring. So the company focuses on making learning fun and simple. So the idea is to gamify learning, make it simple, break down the concepts and make it available. So both children as well as adults who have difficulty with some basic concepts and life skills, they use our platform, which is on the web. It's available for use on any devices because it's on the website. So on various devices, they use it, and across the country and a few across the world are also using it.
Wow,
And from my
that's a
perspective, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting thing that you're doing. It's very unique and compared to all the edtech startups that we hear every day, right? So everyone is just targeting that typical commercial, scale up model to the existing models. But what you're doing is a use of technology to solve a problem that no one, thought should be solved. So it's kind of a social startup along with, running a profitable edtech company, right? So I have a question for that. How did you start EdQueries? Like, what was that aha moment when you thought that okay, this is a problem that needs to be solved, right? What are the facts? What are the numbers behind this?
Yeah,
And
because
yeah, you
so
can go
yeah,
on.
when I wanted to start my own company, so I was initially thinking I want to do something about education because that's been my passion. I mean, I've been learning throughout my life, and I'm interested in teaching and things like that. So I initially thought of building a company uh, which is focused on higher education, like PhD level education, and maybe medical education, higher end. But then there were many in the edtech space, and also the point was too many of the companies are, and too many of our, even the consumer end, they are focused on passing exams. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to focus on something that will make a change in a different way. And while I was hunting for faculty for such an education, someone came up with a question that will it work for special education? So
Mm-hmm.
then I thought about it. Then special education as a field, I thought mostly it would be children, and then then I realized my own background is into pediatrics. By training, I'm a pediatrician, and I specialized in technology later on. I have worked as a pediatrician, so I thought then my knowledge will be applied here, and this would be something where there is already a felt need. You're not pushing something into somebody, but people are seeking it, and it would mean a very realistic change in somebody's life. And so I thought, let me try this out. So with that, the journey started, and that's how, I mean, I find it useful myself.
Wow, that's a very inspiring and interesting story. Any numbers that do you have, like how many children with special needs are in India or pan global, that problem you are trying to solve for them specifically?
Pardon, can you repeat that question, please?
So the numbers, like how many number of children are in India having special needs, or globally, who can be benefited through your solution?
I did not really get the question, but I would say both across, and I assume you're asking about an examples of usage of that in India as well as globally.
Yeah, basically, I want to know
See,
like
both,
how many children are there who can be benefited? Like, is there a number to it? Like, as per probably the government
see,
survey or any kind
India
of study?
specific numbers are not very clear. Uh, there are numbers, but I often don't remember the numbers, but the prevalence is increasing. And this is also not, see, if you will look at numbers globally, more in the US, you'll find a lot of statistics, and in Europe. But India specific statistics are minimal. But you will find a lot of children with ADHD, as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and other attention deficit disorders, which is a very high prevalence. And all these are increasing in number. Of late, maybe the diagnostics have improved, as well as there are other factors due to which these are increasing over the day. So
Okay.
earlier you would rarely hear about it, but now a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people tell about in my relatives or in my friends, I know somebody. So it has come to that extent. And
Yes.
most schools are unable to tackle with such students. They really don't know how to tackle. And special educators who are specialized teachers who know this are few and far between, and are only in urban centers. So that was another vision that I had, that why not capture the knowledge of these special educators who have the knowledge and experience in these matters and make it available across the country.
Sounds fair. Sounds good enough. Okay. So let's move on to the next question that I have for you. That during the startup phase of 0 to 1, right? What are the kind of challenges that did you face? Like, and how did you manage to solve them? Like when you started from the scratch and reached to the level 1.
Yeah, so level one when we started was the point where what is available on the internet, which can really work for these children. And especially what happens is, in real life, there is no child who will be having only one problem. They could have multiple. Also, I mean, they are children, so they have their own interests as well. So what could it be? First of all, to understand that what could I make which will interest them as well as not distract them. Right? We are talking about attention deficit. Now, child is not paying attention, or there is a visual perception challenge, or intellectual challenge. So there is such a wide spectrum, and we don't know who is going to use it. So the child could have various challenges and various interests as well. So when we started, we first of all we had to figure out which particular multimedia or e-learning software to use, how much of color to add. Each and every element had to be chosen. If you primarily we differentiate in the way that we use minimal elements. Not don't use excess audio, don't use too much colors. So we started gradually adding colors. Initially, when we started, we were plain white background with almost black and white. Then we showed it to a few people. So my background of product management also helped, because right from the beginning, from day one, we were sharing the product with various end users and getting feedback. So that continuous feedback process helped us improve from what we were to now. That continuous feedback process, understanding is it working for the child or not. So we would talk to parents, we would talk to teachers, special educators. I would go around to different faculty and take the criticism positively, and that helped us.
Fair enough. Uh, So, Dr. Sridhar, I have next question for you. So now you people are seeing, edtech startups are getting funded left and right, and in past 2 3 years, edtech are like some of the most uh, hot categories for the investments of VC. So, what do you think are the advantages when it goes with bootstrapped startup or heavily funded startup, and which one do you prefer, like to run a edtech company?
So I would prefer Bootstrap, and that's what we are today. For being bootstrapped is we are going, I mean, probably I would anticipate your next question. And I would say we deliberately want to go slow. So this is not a tech company in the standard sense. I would call it a special ed tech or a medical ed tech. Because we are trying to figure out what works for somewhere. I mean, we are getting into the medical field. We're talking about ADHD, autism, and children with these challenges. So we need to slowly figure this out. For example, I would simply say when we are teaching addition to any child, you might quickly cover the syllabus. But here we have to go slow, give a lot of variations around the same subject. So the progress is slow and steady. So a bootstrapped company can focus on that instead of initially focusing on sales and rapid scalability and all that pressure. We have to focus on improving the product so that it works.
Completely agree. I completely agree with that. I think with the current market meltdown and everything happening, I think Bootstrap is the way to go. Right, till the time you find a correct product market fit, because most of these startups are facing today that problem, that they have raised huge amount of money, they are burning money left and right on marketing and advertisement and brand building, but the product market fit is still not there. So I completely agree with what you said, that build up the product, have a good user experience, and once that is fine, probably then it can be scaled up. So Dr. Sridhar, I want to ask you, what do you think about like the initial hiring or initial team? Like, how did you find your initial set of people with whom you want to build your dream startup, and how did you scale them? Like, how many of people are working in the team right now, and what is your mantra when it comes to have the first set of employees?
See, from the hiring perspective, for us, it has always, even before the pandemic, we were online. Have always been online. And the hiring was in such a sense, we were actually looking for consultants. So from a teacher's perspective, we initially did hire a full-time person, but they were also consultants because they want to do other things. I said, you're free to do everything, because this is about innovation and understanding the challenge online, how to build, how to design. So we took the right people, consultants, and that also give a variety, because each teacher would come from a different perspective. So that is the subject matter expert angle. Then there was the designers. So we hired interns, and whoever wanted to stay with us, whoever was good, was retained and they stayed on with us. So we are a very small team. And the reason we have kept it that way, I mean, around 5, I would say. That's all we have. And the reason we always kept it small is it's a slow and steady process. We have to explain to them each, and we call it game. But each and every activity or game that we build, some people would call it a worksheet, right? So if I have to teach them addition, 2 + 1, 3 + 1, I have to build that. The way it has to be built, that has to be explained. We have to slowly check it. So the process is very slow and steady. So scaling up that team, we wanted to do it carefully, because it is very tempting to go fast, and the designer is always tempted to add extra elements because they think if it's for children, so we have to make it look good. We have to add a Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck or some elephant. So to explain to them why that is not required or how this has to be made, keep the team small and grows slowly. Once we scale up, if the demand comes, then also we'll ensure that the team is small enough so that they understand how this is done.
Fair enough. So, Dr. Sridhar, in your opinion, what do you think is a better option? Like, to hire people with the edtech knowledge of the earlier edtech companies, and then train them for your special medical edtech child with special needs, or hire people with completely fresh approach with zero edtech background and then train them? Which one do you think is a better way to reach out?
See, because this is such a niche space, we have to train them anyway. What we look for is competency in the back, which they come up with, at least that has to be there. So if you are a designer, you have to be a good designer. If you are a teacher, you have to be a good teacher. So you cannot expect a very good teacher to know knowledge, have knowledge of technology. You cannot expect a designer to have knowledge of special education domain. But if they are good at their fundamental job, my role is to tie up those two knowledge domains, right? So as a product manager, when I work, and now as a CEO plus product manager, my job is to ensure that both the teams, one is a domain expert, the other is a design expert, they're working together, they understand each other. And if they're good at their job, they soon pick up. So it's very difficult to say that somebody in such a niche domain will be ready-made available outside.
Fair enough. So the listeners, if you guys are interested in joining such a EdTech who's doing amazing, brilliant job at solving such a critical problem, you can always reach out to Dr. Sridhar at EdQueries. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to tell you what is the problem that he's solving. Yeah. So Dr. Sridhar, I want to know, like, what is the vision of yours for EdQueries, and how do you plan to add more customers, or let me rephrase it, how do you plan to add more users for the solutions that you have built up, and what is your long-term vision for EdQueries?
So if I heard your question clearly, you're asking about long-term vision and how do we want to grow the customer base?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So the long-term vision is to build this product in such a way that people refer to it as the product for special education needs. So that will be a slow and long process because the scope is huge. We have adults who are using it for learning. We have children who are used for learning. There are some who are high functional, who are very difficult to differ. And we are even going to the standard schools, the typical normal or whatever we call neurotypical children. They are also using. So we are going to Chennai for a school, which is like any other school. We are also going to special ed schools. So we want that whoever be the child, he should be able to use it with interest, should seek learning from their parents and say, I want to use it, and parents should be able to happily give this instead of them using a video game or a YouTube channel. So that is our long-term vision, to cover that scope and constantly keep improving the product. You might call it a perpetual beta for that matter. So that for any tech need, special ed need, this will be the go-to product. That is our long vision. We want to reach across India in every village, wherever they need it. And we might have to go multilingual. So we will be doing that as well. As far as increasing the customer base is concerned, we are lucky that our existing customers, they are referring more customers to us. And even teachers are telling other teachers. So we are not into a lot of online marketing. The occasional Facebook ad might be used, but mostly it is influencer marketing, in the sense that our existing users, our teachers, our students, they are getting us more customers.
Fair enough. So basically, like, the early set of adopters are referring more people, and the more users are adopting, the referrals are increasing basically. Of course, it's for a product like this, I can totally imagine, like, it's the aha moment, the moment I come to hear about a product like this and I know a child which has special needs in any of my friend circle or family, I would definitely go and, tell them about it, because as of now, I can't think about a single company who's solving a problem like this. Right. So another thing that I want to ask you is, what do you think about the EdTech as a market right now for any new startup or anyone who wants to enter into this field and solve the problems right now? How do you think, like, EdTech has changed as a market, and how do you think it will change in the years to come?
Again, could you rephrase that in a short question?
How do you think the EdTech has evolved as a segment for startups? And how do you think in next few years it will evolve for any kind of new startups that want to join?
See, EdTech now is, as you said, is hot property, and with the pandemic experience, more and more people are thinking that online learning is there. But as in any segment, people provide quality, people who keep their customers happy, they will survive and they will prosper. What you need is perseverance, Don't look at it as a business. Look at it as a duty to society. You're keeping your students, you're focusing on. Then you will survive and people will start liking your product. Competition will always be there. And what you need to do is you have to focus on the customer, ensure the education is being provided properly. And then I'm sure those who are doing a good job over there, the customers will like it. And that's how you will be able to survive and prosper.
Fair enough. So, Dr. Sridhar, now coming to the tougher part of the podcast, right? We always ask people who have come here that during the journey they have made a lot of mistakes, they have done a lot of failures, and they have learned from it. So we want to know what is your failure story, right? Can you like mention some failures that you have made along the journey and things that could be done to avoid it?
You're talking about failures and mistakes, right?
Yes.
I think from our perspective, it was always experimenting various things and learning from the failures. As I said, when we were trying to design this kind of a product, so how do you design the content? We sometimes went very idealistic, as I said, with very bland colors and trying to design it ourselves and not seeking help. So that happened initially, and then as we got more customer feedback, we became better. The other thing, of course, is going too much away from the scope. Scope creep
Mm-hmm.
has always been a problem. So you can get very much tempted into covering entire Q12, entire engineering, medical. So, or as we say, life skills is there, communication skills is there. So much is there that you can do. And we have often been taken away from our primary thing. So we are told ourselves to get back to the primary job. So scope creep, I would say, is something we need to always be careful. Proper project management has to be done because for startup resources are always limited. So one has to be careful to use it, judiciously.
Fair enough.
So once we
And
learned from that, we were able.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Completely, I get it. So can you like throw some light about marketing for a product like yours, and how could a startup scale it like in this segment? Like what kind of marketing campaigns are you running, or any kind of brand
Yeah, the
building that
first
you are
things
doing?
first, I think, is to have a good website.
Mm-hmm.
This was again actually one of our failures. We had gone into a very idealistic mode, probably, or probably focusing too much on the core product. And later on, we realized that a good, a website should look good. So we moved to a different platform. We started blogging about it. So search engine optimization still is important. So we started focusing on blogging. That helped us. We focused on a better website. And also, you have to assume that your potential customer will never talk to you, never meet you, but still would like to use your product. Like they do today, they'll go to a Play Store, they'll download the product and use it. You may not meet the customer ever, or may not be able to convey anything to the customer. So we have to ensure that the website allows them to go smoothly through the entire process. Then we have to ensure that the search engines find the product easily. So that helps. Then presence on various social media platforms. For a startup, it might be difficult to be available on all platforms, but based on where our customers' maximum usage is there, that platform we should have our presence. So that's what we have ensured that we are present in those platforms. And then most important is to continuously serve our existing customers, because word of mouth marketing is never over. You will not be aware whether they are telling somebody or not. But one fine day when somebody comes and quotes that this particular person referred us, that's when you realize the power of word of mouth marketing. So it's always good to ensure your current customers are happy and they refer you constantly.
Fair enough. So like the one of the core part of your website is, as I was like going through the entire courses and everything, I could see that there are a lot of games, right? and you provide a lot of learning via the gamification, right? You have gamified the entire learning. So my next question is, how does games help in learning?
Once again, you'll have to repeat it. How does gamification work?
Yeah, how does gamification help in the process of learning?
See, learning as such, if you ask, even when we were children, you are asked to sit in a classroom 35 minutes, 45 minutes, and every topic may not be interesting. Rather, more often than not, children get bored about it with the subject. They get bored with the subject. So, and they have to sit throughout the day. I mean, from 9 to 3 or 8 to 4, whatever be that school timings. So if you're not utilizing the available medium to make learning fun, then you are losing the concentration of the student. So earlier also, when multimedia was not available, teachers used to make learning fun. The good teacher would always crack a joke here, give an example over there, or bring something which was more practical, allow the children to play. So that ensures that the students experience learning in a much better way, and they then come back and seeking more answers. And you don't want to push learning, you want a pull. You want them to get attracted to learning. Now, science is a very interesting subject. Maths can be very interesting. If you give them the right problems, people will think of it the game. Right? Throw a dice. So, for example, in our platform in EdQueries, we have games like that. You have a treasure hunt, find the shapes. So instead of directly asking them what is a square, what is a triangle, we want them to go through the treasure hunt, find the triangle. And when they make a mistake, we are telling them, oh, this is the triangle. Again, there's a psychology involved here that when people make mistakes, they're more likely to remember. We always remember the mistake which we made in the exam long ago, and we wish we would have done a better job. So we don't want to tell them at all that we are teaching them. We want them to enjoy. Anywhere, everybody around the child is trying to teach them something, and they are already learning in school. So when you give them such a gamified platform, they enjoy the pleasure of learning, and it need not be something futuristic of the next year's syllabus. It is something which they have already learned. They are applying it again on their own and taking the pleasure from that. So that's why gamification helps.
That's a very, very interesting concept. I wish growing up we guys also had something like that to help us with learning. So we are at the end of the podcast, right, Dr. Sridhar? One last thing that I want to ask you, that do you have any kind of message or any request to the listeners who are listening to this podcast all across the world? Do you want to ask them anything or tell them anything about what you're doing, about your vision, any kind of help that you want them to do?
Well, since your audience may mostly startup founders and those who are entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, for that audience, I would only say that identify a problem, solve the problem, try your best to solve the problem, and the customers will surely come to you. Have the perseverance and patience, build a high quality, solid product. It will take time, and be part of the groups of entrepreneurs who can help you with along because it's a lonely space sometimes. So keep your spirits high, focus on solving a problem, don't look for the quick buck. When you do that, people will join you happily on your journey. So that is my message for the startup group. Okay, it's all a simple application of common sense and trying to help others. When you're trying to help others, automatically things will fall in place. For others, I would just say that, understand kids, they want to learn things, make their journey in life fun and simple and nice, and see to it that they're enjoying education. And then you will see the results automatically.
Thank you, Dr. Sridhar, for such an amazing and informative session. Right, it was a breadth of very, very fresh startup knowledge that we had today towards the problem that you are solving. Right, To all the people who are listening, I request you all to kindly share and subscribe to Master of Growth. And we keep bringing such fresh content to you on a regular basis. Thank you, Dr. Sridhar, for joining us today. Best of luck for your
Thanks.
startup, and we
My
hope to
pleasure.
see you like on a very bigger scale